Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cosmic Owl Astrology. I am Louise Eddington, your Cosmic Owl, and it's my really big pleasure to have with me today, all the way from Melbourne, Australia, Julia Simas, the founder of the Cosmic Intelligence Agency. Julia's been teaching, practicing, circulating astrology since starting the CIA in 2005. Having lectured and presented online and in many parts of the globe at various conferences, schools, and retreats, Julia devotes most of her time to the CIA, which is the Cosmic Intelligence Agency, managing the membership, content, and speaker schedules, as well as managing CIA's social media channels and publishing CIA's online Time Lords magazine, now in its 15th edition. Julia is a keen researcher. She really is. I love how she researches and learning new ways of doing and using astrology as a living magic, particularly interested in the cycles and patterns of our living cosmos. And for those of you that follow this channel, you'll know that that's why I like Julia. Julia and I are actually going to meet in person this September for the first
Wow,
time.
for the first time. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Thanks, Louise. It's amazing. We know each other for so long online and
I
it's
know.
about time.
I
It's
know.
right. Yeah.
Oh, but Julia is here today to talk about geodetic maps. And you might be going, what are they? Well, Julia's going to explain them to you. So, most people are aware that, you have got maps in astrology and some people use it for relocation and things. I'm not actually a fan of using it to choose relocation. I think relocation always chose me and I chose the right place, but that's the way I
Mhm.
approach astrology. But geodetic maps are a whole different thing, and Julia's going to explain.
Yes, yes. Well, look, first of all, thank you so much, Louise, for having me on your channel. And congratulations. I think you've grown quite a good following and all that kind of
Mm,
stuff, like a
mm.
good agent.
Yes.
As we like to say, we set, everyone send out, be free to be an astrologer and, do
Mm,
good work. So
mm,
I mean, it's such a joy to see astrology spreading, but so much. But then
mm.
we really need those astrologers that know what they're talking about, because how much do we know that AI is writing now, the
Oh,
dates are wrong, all kinds of things. Even the astronomy now, you probably would have noticed that, the AI is writing the astronomy, that you can see this up in the sky. And,
yes,
it
it
feels
is.
it feels like the job's never finished, in the sense of how
Mm,
much we still want to, kind of, well, in a sense, protect and help guide the right way
mm.
because of so much rubbish. So yeah,
Oh,
anyway.
there really is. And I quite like AI. I use it for certain things, and I think you
Sure.
do too,
Yeah.
but I don't use it to write my astrology or or read a chart. It doesn't, it's terrible.
Well, you
No,
can't rely on it for that.
no.
And you've got to know the astrology in the background to be
Mhm.
able to do it properly. So
Yeah,
anyway, that's just
yeah,
always going to be our beef, isn't it?
it is.
So,
Age of Aquarius, we are going
that's right. Or our mission to keep up the real work, let's say.
Mm,
So yeah, so geodetic maps, and I'll explain as we go.
mm,
They've been used for, let's say, in the state that I'm going to be talking about, it is about 100 years, since about the
mm,
1930s, and even somewhat before. But we've got to remember that, let's say astro mapping, in a sense, really began in Ptolemy's time and probably before
mm,
that, right? Where he segregated different areas of the world to belong to different, elements, first of all.
mm.
Then, then sun signs, sort of, places and all that kind of thing. But that there always was a meridian that they called kind of the center of the world,
Mm.
that everything was kind of projected from. And that used to be through Jerusalem and then down into the pyramids. And I always found that quite amazing, because we could still use that line if we wanted to now,
Mhm.
because it is such a hot spot of what is going on in the world. And it
Really?
actually goes up to Moscow, right? It actually
Oh,
goes
yeah,
up to
of course it
Moscow.
does. Yeah.
Yeah, but over the years, oh, hang on, why isn't this moving? Over the years, the meridian that we use has been moved to Greenwich.
Mm,
And that happened in 1883 or something like that, and it was chosen as the meridian, that will define, time to start with,
mm,
and then the latitudes or the longitudes that go across the Earth, from that 0 point that is
mm,
Greenwich near London. And so that's what astrologers came to use. Okay, so after the 1880s, and that meridian was picked, by the scientific world because most of the shipping coordinates started from there. Okay,
mm.
so some of us might think it's a bit of a, like, why does time start there? Or, whatever is
Yes.
measured from there and all that kind of thing. Why isn't it the international date line?
Mm,
Anyway, I'm sticking to zero meridian because it's incredibly accurately working
mm,
when we look at it closer. Okay, so actually, I might go to the next slide. So, a geodetic map is a map that's projected onto the world that begins at zero Aries, right through Greenwich and all the way down in longitude. Okay.
mhm,
And then every 30 degrees across, so it's equally divided, 30 degrees across. If you look up closely up there, 30
mm,
degrees of Aries, 30 degrees of Taurus, 30 degrees of Gemini. At the cardinal points, we get 30 degrees of Cancer, Leo, and so on.
mm,
Okay. Um, the rising, these wavy lines that are going up, you can see that at the crossing points, we're going to get, hang on, let's go back to zero Aries.
mm,
At zero Aries, the next cardinal point is the crossing point that rises. So Cancer rises at the equator for
mm,
30 degrees this way. Now, the rising degrees are harder to work out, and you'd need a book of tables, as we call it,
mm.
to be able to work out the MC and the longitude, manually, right? So if
Yeah.
we were doing a course, I would print out a big map and I'd get you to actually plot all those lines. So the lines across are easy to plot, but the lines going up from the equator and
Mm,
across, but there's also 12 of them. So Cancer rises here, Leo rises in this segment,
mm,
Virgo rises until it hits Libra here. Then, what do you call it? Libra, Cancer, sorry, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, and so on. So you
mm,
got to get to know this map, and it does not move. This is the most important thing. It's not like an ACG map where, if we were to do a map for right now, particular things will be rising over me in Melbourne, and other things will
mm,
be rising, and other signs will be rising where Louise is, right? The fixed map is just a fixed map. It does not move, but planets will move through them.
mm.
Okay?
Can you create these in any Astro software, or is it just the
Yes, this
world
is
map?
Astro Gold.
Yeah, I'm
This is
just
Astro
for the
Gold.
viewers. Yeah,
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 sure, sure.
yeah.
So, and then there's a setting like in your map guide to actually, use what kind of map. So there's
Mm,
geodetic maps, there's ACG maps, or there's local space maps.
mhm,
These are the main three, okay? And they're going to give you different lines around the world map. And it's worth looking at all the three of them to know the difference for the
mm,
same chart. So I would say look at it for your own natal chart to start with
yes.
and see what the difference is, okay? The ACG map is going to show exactly what was rising on the ascendant,
Mm,
whereas the MC, what was culminating, but the geodetic map is just going to slot all your Sagittarian planets into the Sagittarius areas,
mm,
right?
mm, mm,
Or it's going to slot all your Aries planets under the Aries area of
mm,
the map. Okay. And that in itself is really quite interesting to look at. When I've learned more about mapping, in like one thing that really gets me, Louise, is that we hear a lot, and again, mapping has really increased with the use of software, people's interest online, the way it's kind of circulated. But there is no way I would send someone to their Venus line just like that. Do
No,
you know what I mean?
you have to
Like,
look
oh,
at
your Venus goes through New Zealand. You must go to New Zealand to meet your lover or your husband.
oh, you have to look at everything, right?
You have to look at everything. So I've
Because
learned to look at all three chart or all of the maps in order to make a decision or help guide them,
so
right?
I
So
lived on, I lived, I lived in Adelaide. I lived in Australia,
yes,
everybody, for a
right,
while.
right, right.
I was on my moon line there and I loved Adelaide. I loved it, but I was lazy as hell. So,
Right, right,
it's
right. So if we look at Adelaide, yeah, so
like,
two, like it was that sort of time in the sun kind of part of your life. So
hmm
Adelaide's here. So we can see it's a Sag rising area,
hmm
right? So this is Sag rising with Leo on the MC. Okay,
mm,
so you think about what planets you have in Leo. I know you've got a Sag rising. So I would say Adelaide's about 5 degree, or like if you think that's the middle, 15, it's probably about
mm,
5, 8, 9. Actually might be very similar to where you live now,
right.
which would, do you know what I mean? So
Right.
how
Okay.
interesting is that?
Yeah.
Sag is on the MC where you're
Yeah.
living now,
Yeah.
right?
But
So you
on
find.
my relocation map there, I was on my moon, on my ACG map, I was on
Yeah,
the
yeah,
moon.
okay, when your ACG map, right.
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
this way, why are you attracted to Sag, places, right? Or that have
Because I have so
Sagittarius.
much in Sagittarius.
There you go. So this is like, the great sort of adventure you can go on with this for your own chart,
Mm.
right? So again, the most important thing is, and we'll see planet lines moving through there in a sec, but let's just go back. So it's the zodiac across the map of the world, okay? So that every place on the map has a geodetic equivalent. It's called a GE, okay? So as we were talking, Melbourne's got a particular GE. So it is 18 degrees Sagittarius rising with a 25 degrees MC in Leo,
Mm.
meaning that the IC is 25 Aquarius, meaning that the descendant is 18 Gemini. Now, whenever we have anything that, let's say, a full moon, mutable 18 or whatever, we know
Mm.
that that's going to be very much connected with Melbourne, Australia. Or if we have anything at 25 Leo or 25 Aquarius, it's going to be on the MC and IC over Melbourne, Australia.
Mm.
Now, we've just had some really incredibly big fires through
Yeah,
all
you
of
have.
Victoria.
Mm.
And like Melbourne's 25, what do you call it? To the west of us is 23 degrees.
Mm.
To the east of us is 27 degrees. Now, what's been squaring 27 degrees of fixed?
Uranus.
Uranus. So you've always got to pay attention to, it's not
Mm.
just what planet is there, but the squares, or as I'd say, the eighth harmonic squares, 45-degree angles, and let's just stick to squares and
Yeah.
oppositions for now, okay?
Yeah.
Because really, when you look at the geodetic map, you can fold it, you can fold it, you can fold it again, and things will be all lined up. This is how you
Mm.
use midpoints, all lined up in a particular part of the world, right?
Mm.
Anyway, so yeah, geodetic astrology is a system where one can determine locations where a particular planetary event may be more prominent because of the degrees of the planets that are passing through there.
Mm.
So again, remembering it does not move, and the zodiac moves from east. Sorry, it moves east around, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Always with a fixed midheaven and a fixed ascending degree. Never changes. Planets move through them. And, the key is to actually know, like if you live in New York, what are the geodetic equivalent? What is the geodetic equivalent of New
Mm.
York? Whatever place. So every place, even, not even a city, a desert location,
Mm.
will have a geodetic equivalent. Okay.
Mm.
So yeah, again, getting to know
So
that.
this eclipse is just the upcoming eclipse on the 17th is very close to Melbourne then. So
Ah, yeah, well, actually, it's through Sydney. It's actually through
Yeah.
Sydney, right?
Well, yeah.
Because yes, so more than Melbourne, it's actually Sydney, and we have just had this incredible uprising because the
Yeah.
Israeli president is visiting, and people are protesting, as we know, because of the Bondi shootings that
Yeah.
happened in December. There's been this uproar about anti-Semitism, and
Mm.
oh my gosh, it's so we're having our own sort of version of these ICE events
Mm.
with police brutality happening at the protests. So the eclipse is in a few days, and
Mhm.
so highlight over Sydney, Australia, definitely. Yeah.
Wow.
Um, so anyway, let's just keep
Mm.
going. So again,
Yes.
we want to really just know where the cardinal points are because okay, so Libra's through there. It's on the edge, right?
Mm.
And Aries through there. Then we've got the other cardinal points of Cancer and Capricorn. So Capricorn starts there, Aries. Okay, so we've got these quadrants. Again, if
Mm.
you fold them on top of each other, they are all connected.
Yeah.
Okay. Like as we know with cardinal degrees and angles,
Mm.
zero Capricorn, zero Libra, zero Aries,
Yeah.
zero whatever the other one is,
And to,
zero
and yeah, Cancer, Capricorn, yeah,
Cancer.
Libra, and Aries. But just to go, to Julia saying they fold you fold them. That's like what we were talking about Uranus squaring.
Yes,
Um, so for
exactly.
anybody that
Yeah,
didn't get that,
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
kind of like you're folding Uranus onto kind of Victoria,
Exactly.
really.
Like as
Yeah.
you would even on a chart, you go, okay,
Mhm.
like we can
Mm.
see it because the aspect is there.
Mm.
In geodetics, you get to know it because,
Mm.
you go, and again, it's alarm bells. Oh, something's at 27 degrees, Leo,
Mm.
Uranus is squaring that right now,
Mm.
or Uranus is coming up to the 0 points of
Mm.
Gemini. So the mutable 0 degrees are
Yeah.
activated everywhere. Okay. And then, we think about the zero Gemini, it's actually trine Pluto, and, like it
Mm.
brings in whatever we're seeing on a map. I mean,
Mm.
in a chart in the end.
Yeah.
So again, getting to know particular areas of the world, like let's just say Tehran is a Leo ascendant,
Mm.
meaning the eclipse coming is on the descendant,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it's right near the edge of Virgo, so that means it's right at the edge of Leo and Aquarius, and that is 26 degrees of Aquarius. Okay.
And
So
that's rather
Leo,
an earthquake zone as well. So
yeah, right. Well, one of the first
mm.
things that really got my attention about geodetic maps is when the earthquake happened through Turkey there, the huge
Mm.
earthquake and opening the big gap.
Mm.
And there was a full moon just a few hours before that was right through the area,
Wow.
geodetically. Okay,
Yeah.
so this kind of started my adventure into all of this or looking at it further because there's actually only two books that I know of. I don't know if we'll see them that kind of explain geodetic astrology with not that many some examples or so on. And one of
Mm.
them was written, by Safariel back in the 1930s, and it's called
Oh,
The
was.
Theory of Geodetic Equivalence in
Mm.
Relation to Mundane Astrology. And then the wonderful Chris McCrae, who I met a few times, and she
I
was an
met her
agent actually.
once. I met
Right,
her
right.
once.
And she was an agent.
Yeah. Mm.
So she wrote a book, Geodetic Astrology for Relocating and World Affairs. So there
Mm.
might be a few more. I think there's a few more, but really expensive, like as again, very old
Yeah.
books can be very expensive to buy. So anyway, time to write another one, maybe.
It is Julia. And it's
Yeah.
in a way it's amazingly simple, you
It
know.
is amazingly simple. It
Yeah.
certainly is. It's probably one of the simplest things to actually
Mm.
work with. But again, we
Mhm.
what we got to remember, it's exceptionally symbolic. Like,
Yes.
again, but it's so accurate. We know that a lot of astrology is immensely symbolic, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so yeah, so getting to know particular, like let's just go down this Scorpio midheaven. It shows Scorpio all the way down, but if it's a midheaven in Scorpio, we know Taurus is the polarity, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the maps don't show that, but just, think about it as a polarity, Scorpio, Taurus. So if we go down, we can see in this rising area, hang on, I've got to move this, is Sagittarius,
Mm,
right? Scorpio,
mm,
Sagittarius. Then we move down here, it's Scorpio, Capricorn, because
mm,
Capricorn's rising, right?
mm,
Move down here, it's Aquarius,
mhm.
Scorpio, okay? Until we get here, then we've got, we've got the next version, we've got Aquarius. So it makes every place have its own flavor.
Mm,
Um, and you can think about what places in the world am I attracted to, or,
mm,
that I've lived in before, and
mhm.
what are their coordinates? What's on the midheaven, what's rising? You'll find significantly, incredible kind of connections to place.
Yeah.
Um, and then just remembering my husband did this graphic for me because I wish that our actual solar, what do you call it, software would do
Mm,
something like this to sort of differentiate more, that we could more clearly see, So just as an example, all the fixed signs are in red, the rising anyway, just so you can
yeah.
see more clearly how they're connected. So that if something's happening in the mutable zone, it's happening in the other mutable zones, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Again, like I said, folding the map on top of each other and
Mm.
stuff like that.
Well, you can
So
see how
that's,
they would fold, like,
yeah.
the down and the up, they would just fold onto each other. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Although, it sort of swaps around as you come down,
Yeah.
like here it
Yeah.
is. Yeah. So the
Mm,
folding di hor vertically will make
mm,
more sense. The folding
yeah.
horizontally, maybe not as much. But
Yeah.
yeah, again, I would actually print a bigger one
Mm,
out. And maybe we can put it in the thread for people and
yeah.
fold it and see
Yeah.
what you find.
Yeah. Send one over.
Yeah.
I can link
Yeah,
to it.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So, I mean, one of the first experiments to do with your own chart is what are your angles? So my angles are Sag MC, like, hang on, where I was born, I was Virgo MC, Sag Ascendant, Pisces IC,
Mm,
Gemini Descendant. I was born in Sydney.
mm,
So what places in the world have a combination of that for me, right?
mm.
Um, I haven't been.
What degree ascendant, by the way? Just out of, do you remember?
I'm 21 Sag. Yes.
No, that's my
I know. I
son.
think we've talked about that
My son
before.
degree. Just for everybody
Yeah, right,
listening,
right,
no
right.
wonder I like Julia. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
And
I
I
mean,
like
that's just
Sydney.
an
I like
example.
Sydney too. So.
Yeah, right. So that's just an example of my angles, or,
Mm,
angles. Whereas you could do it for your Venus degree. You
mm.
could do it for,
Yeah.
your nodal axis, whatever in your chart. Okay. And most of all, put your whole chart into a geodetic map and you'll see what's going
Mm.
on. So hang on, I meant to
I'm kind of
so
chuckling because I was born right on of course, the zero Aries point, the main meridian, and that's my south node, and I've done everything I can to move
Oh,
away
right.
from it.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, having said that, I was born with a Virgo MC in Sydney. So my chart, my ACG map is very similar to the
Mm.
geodetic map. So
Yeah,
my lines don't change much, and
yeah.
that also fascinated me. And some of you will find that if you're born with, Taurus, I don't know, let's say you're born in Istanbul and Taurus is on, zero Taurus is on your midheaven, you're going to have a very similar chart to a geodetic map as well.
Yeah.
Um, but what was that?
Mm,
So every place on the planet, leaders and cities. Now, let's just talk about leaders for a moment.
mm,
They also have, degrees in their natal chart. Let's just say Beijing, China,
mm,
is a 23-degree Libra ascendant and 26 Cancer MC. Now, 23 Libra is the opposite to 23 Aries
Aries.
rising in Washington, D.C. So the China, USA capital city, I mean,
Mm,
capitals have
mm,
got completely the opposite
yeah.
sentence. So, no wonder they're kind of always at each other in
Mm,
some sense, right? Then, like a leader like Putin, he's got a 13 Libra sun. Now, what is USA Washington
Mm.
MCIC is 13 Capricorn Cancer. So that exactly squares that.
Yeah.
We can go on and on. I'll just keep it quite brief. Now, Zelensky, got a 17 Leo moon, is the same geodetic ascendant as Kiev.
Oh,
So
wow.
as a Leo moon person, he is, he's the president
Yeah.
and he's got the same moon. Now we find that all the time. It's really quite incredible.
Mm.
And he's got a 6 degrees Aquarius sun that squares the MC of Moscow. Moscow MC is 5 Taurus. Netanyahu also 15, 16 cardinal nodal axis and Neptune. So again,
Mm.
US Washington capital related. His son was the same as Kamala Harris. 27, what was it, Libra is a
Libra.
little bit off the capital, but more closer to New York or something.
Mm.
Um, and he's got a 23 degrees Capricorn, Libra, Jupiter, and Ceres. Again, very much related to the ascendant of of Washington.
Mm.
Um, Looking at things like Canberra, Australia, for the Australians watching, 27 Leo is the MC and 18 Sag is the ascendant. And again, to, Uranus has been squaring that right
Yeah.
now as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yeah.
The
And
most popular,
Canberra's the capital, by the way, if you don't know.
yes, sorry,
Yeah.
yes, Canberra's the
Yeah.
capital. And Bob Hawke was Australia's most loved Prime Minister, and he slots right into the ascendant
Mm.
of Canberra and a few other things, and the current Prime Minister a little bit, but not as much, which is,
Mm.
really interesting,
It
right?
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I thought he was more liked than some of the previous ones, but anyway. Or is he
Well,
not at the
yes,
moment?
the previous one, but again, it's
Yes.
almost like a lot of people are saying he's selling us out now too.
Mm.
Anyway, uh, politics.
Oh, I know.
We're not allowed to talk
Mm.
about it, Louise.
No, I don't want to.
Anyway, so now this is the US capital, Washington
Mm.
DC, MCIC 13 Capricorn Cancer, and of course you know that the USA Sun is 14 Cancer. So
Do you think they knew that, the founders?
I think so. I
Yeah, I
think
think
so.
so.
Although the before that geodetic zero Greenwich was assigned, this is
Mm.
1776, isn't it?
Yeah. Hmm.
So, but the Greenwich assignment did happen in New York. It didn't happen in England.
Ah.
So perhaps it was always something that was developing.
Mm.
I mean, we know that Washington's built with, Masonic sort of templates and alignments and all that sort of thing. So, is it a coincidence? Probably not.
I
Right?
I I really don't think it is, no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
So again, so anything happening on the cardinal 13, degrees Cancer Capricorn, we know is very much associated with the MCIC there.
Mm.
And also the ascendant, descendant 23 Aries Libra. Now, what's there right now? 23 Aries.
Chiron.
Chiron. And again,
And Eris.
yes, well, okay, so the interesting thing about Eris was when Trump was elected in 2016,
Mm.
she was at 23
She was,
degrees.
yeah.
Yeah. Now they've both again been hovering. The Eris moves a lot slower, and so also the USA has been going through its Chiron return, or the fifth
Mhm.
one or 10th one. I can't remember which how many, you know. And
But
here it is, right on the ascendant in the
wow.
geodetic map.
Could I just ask what you mean by opposite equals 28 fixed?
Okay,
What do you-
so this is again, I skipped over it because
Yeah.
if you're using a midpoint dial,
Okay.
if you put the dial onto 13 degrees of cardinal, like again, it's like a midpoint dial is folding,
Yeah.
everything on cardinal, everything in cardinal signs will be in one area
Mm.
of the chart. And everything across from that dial at 13 cardinal will be
Mm.
45 degrees aspect
Hmm.
to that, which is so anything at 28 degrees of fixed signs is a 45-degree angle to that. And that is the
So
eighth harmonic.
that's this eclipse, and that's actually
That's
on the
Uranus as
and
well.
and and Uranus, but the 28-degree Aquarius eclipse is right on the ascendant of the transit chart on
Yes,
the
that's right. It's
in
rising there
BC.
as well. Now,
Well,
this is when you see a
that's
lot
why
of
I
things.
asked. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This is when you see a lot of things, you don't just rely on, and especially, I mean, again, do that, for yourself in your own sort of
Mhm.
looking at charts. But we were
Mhm.
always told in mundane astrology, you do not look at just one chart to know
Yeah.
what's going
No,
on, right?
no, you can't. Yeah.
So yes, so 28 fixed and 13, if you look at it just on the wheel, on a normal chart, they'll be
Mm.
45 degrees apart. Okay.
Yeah.
So it brings in everything that is like that. Now that's a little bit more advanced, but it's what I do and it's become natural,
Yeah.
right?
And
For
I only asked because of the degree. I was like,
no, and that shows, you know what you're
yeah,
doing. So
yeah.
so then we have a look at, let's say, a very popular president, um, 12 degrees cardinal nodal axis he had, 20 degrees Libra rising, and a 23 Capricorn Cancer MCIC. So he's
Oh.
so locked in to the
Mm.
capital there. Obama, I mean, you can look at these in your sort of your own time, and then Donald Trump. He's got Jupiter at 14 Libra. That
Mhm.
squares the USA sun and
Mhm.
squares the MCIC. And we know that he's been an incredible, wild card. And again,
Mhm.
the first time he was elected, Eris was moving through Washington on the geodetic map. And it's
Mhm.
like, what is happening? And now we're seeing the full effects of, like, the what's behind it all, Chiron, showing up the obvious wounds to everything,
Mhm.
the
And
exposure.
all the kind of holes in the constitution and things. Basically, it's just like,
Absolutely. How
yeah.
can it go on with all of this, with the
Mhm.
DOJ and all of this being, let's say, sold out and bought,
Yeah.
and anyway, it's incredible
Mhm.
to see all that, isn't it?
It
Right.
is. It's not. It's great
Um,
living it, but
yeah, no,
I'm
no, no,
joking.
that's
No,
right.
but yeah.
So again, if your own country,
Mm.
look at what the leader, or if you, I
Mm.
mean, this is what I've started doing for elections. It's, like, predicting who's going to win. It's not about that.
Mm.
It's about going, well, what do we see in the astrology that might tell about who's going to win?
Yeah,
I use geodetic maps now for that reason. It's
I
like
can.
what's going through the area, what does that, candidate have to offer in that
Mm.
place, right? That is
Mhm.
resonating with the people at the right time. And of course, all the other things that we look at. And
Yeah.
so this was just a map that I kind of created and wrote about for the Neptune ingress. And see up the top there, you can see geodetic map. That's how we know we're looking at it.
Mm.
And we know that this was a Neptune ingress, Neptune right at zero Aries, right over the UK, and Saturn's coming up to it, in the
Any
next few
day now.
days.
Yeah.
Any day, that's right. The weekend,
Yeah.
or from when we're taping this anyway.
Mhm.
So, but what we know about zero Aries, it's a world point, and it
Mhm.
pings off everything, right? So it's not just about what's happening over the UK, although the UK is, what do you call it? Government is very much,
Oh,
siding with China now, not siding, but, making
no,
deals with
no, but
China,
yeah.
things that
And
are,
well, and there's
it is
calls
a
for
process.
Starmer to step down as well because of Mandelson, and it's kind of, there's all kinds of things going on there right now.
Yeah,
So,
there's all kinds of things going on there as well. So,
mhm.
they've got their own story, but again, it's a
Mhm.
world point that triggers
Mhm.
all those other cardinal points and oppositions and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff around the world. So, as the ingress happened, there was, or around that time, let's say, it's
Mhm.
only like to also understand geodetic maps, watch the moon move through and watch everything
Mm,
else move very slowly because the
yeah.
moon will move the fastest and, and pick up kind of nuances. So around this time, in the Cancer, is it Cancer rising? No, it's Leo here. Remember all the floods over Malta, Greece, there was lots. This is a lot of Aquarius planets on the descendant here, right? And it
Mm,
was all going through here. Tehran has Uranus stationing over it. Again, very much in
mm,
the spotlight about what's going to be happening there. And of course, the eclipse looming very closely. We'll look at that a bit closer in a minute.
mm,
Um, then through Australia, we had the hottest
mm,
record temperature in around here, where Uranus is crossing all the other Aquarius planets.
mm.
So that was recorded just north of Adelaide. We had a landslide near on the coast of New Zealand where some people
Gosh,
got covered. I think a few died.
oh,
Jupiter and Saturn were crossing right near there.
I hadn't even
Um,
heard about that one. Good Lord.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things in
Mm,
Chile. There were huge fires as well, and
mm,
we can see
mm,
Jupiter going through there, crossed by Ceres. Ceres
mm.
often has a lot to do with loss and death and all that kind of thing. And Jupiter, I mean, we know Jupiter's in Cancer, but you wouldn't think about Jupiter in Cancer to do with wildfires or anything, right?
No, not
But
really, but
what was happening there was people were fighting their own fires to protect their homes.
mm,
There's not a, like in Australia, we've got the fire brigade, there's, lots of support, let's say,
yeah,
usually never enough because the fires are getting bigger. And you're not allowed to, you're told to evacuate. People are staying at their homes to protect,
yeah.
to fight against them. So this is very much Jupiter in Cancer. I'll do anything to keep my home,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So you've got to think symbolically as well, in all these ways. And then look at this. Pluto is right over Iceland. This is again, it happened before and down to Venezuela. Well, sorry,
mm.
the
Yeah.
Capricorn. So as what do you call it? The stellium was moving through Capricorn. It
Mm,
was all over Venezuela as the abduction happened and all that talk about Greenland. And Pluto is right going over Greenland at the moment,
mm.
right? And will be very slowly. So it's
But
become a thing. It seems safe enough now from threat, I think.
but zero Capricorn's going through Minneapolis pretty much, right? And that's square
Yes, well,
to
this is,
zero
I've
Aries.
got,
So
yes, yes,
yeah.
yes. So this is
Yeah.
something that really shows how a
Mm,
place is kind of activated on the geodetic map. So here is, the Minneapolis like spot exactly, and we
mm,
can see Saturn and Neptune are so close to it, right? More
mm,
so Neptune, Saturn at the time
mhm,
of whatever it was, early January that this happened, that the first shooting in Minneapolis happened.
mm,
Um, and by degrees, Saturn was only about 100, no, 70 miles away, right? So that's
mm,
like 1 degree. Okay.
yeah.
So that's one thing, like on the map, we can see,
Mm,
right? But what we also see is that when we go from Minneapolis Geodetic or the GE, the equivalent,
mm,
27 Sagittarius is the MC, right? And
mm,
25 Pisces is rising. Again, Saturn's just a little bit off the 25 rising, but close enough. Like you're using 1, 2 degree orbs, like very
yeah.
close.
Yeah.
Um,
And Saturn's stationed direct by transit at that degree.
as
So
also at that time. So
yeah.
it became this
Ooh,
huge hotspot of, what was going on, ICE and the way, the government is treating the people and,
mm,
innocent people getting, kind of, well, Pisces sacrificed, in that sort of
yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So here we go. Like, who would have thought, okay, Minneapolis is going to become, a
I
place of
know.
focus.
I know. It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So again,
Yeah.
the coordinates are so spot on to what was
Mhm.
going on there. And then again,
Mhm.
remembering, MC 27 Sagittarius is of course squared by Neptune, right? Even
It
though Neptune's
is.
close, it's actually also squared by Saturn and Neptune as well.
And right
Um,
before all of this, we had a new moon at 28 Sagittarius, right at
oh,
the
there
end
you
of
go.
December.
Yeah, okay. So again, kicking off,
Yeah.
all kinds of things. Um, It's
Well,
just incredible to watch in so many ways.
yeah.
Oh, and sorry, I've just added the way that we actually get the coordinates, right? So end of
Mm.
Sagittarius down here, and you can do it by eye, and in software you can zoom up in the place, so you can really
Yeah.
kind of go, okay, there's Sagittarius, there's the middle, that must be.
Mm.
Although you can click on it in AstroGold, you can click on it, and it will give you the
Yeah.
west and north coordinates, although this part you have to work out yourself
Yeah.
because of tables and stuff. But again,
Yes.
we've got astrology software now, so it makes it a lot easier to work it out. And then, so this is the chart like that we'd slot into, for GE equivalents for Minneapolis
Mm.
is, 25 degrees of Pisces rising,
Mm.
27 degrees of Sag on the MC. And then we
Mm.
slot the astrology into that,
Mm.
right? So
Mhm.
this was for the 7th of January. And of course, the underworld of Mars and Venus were there happening at the same time.
Mm.
However else you
And
want
Mer
to read.
and Mercury, they were all under the
Yeah,
underworld.
right. He was also there, yes.
Yes. Wow.
So, again, but what we want to, like, if we're going to do a geodetic chart equivalent, let's say, we need to find that rising point,
Mhm.
and if you find the rising point, the MC will be automatic,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that happens once a day, everywhere in the location that is equivalent to and that's a bit of magic, actually. That's
Yeah.
like,
I know.
because
Now you've told me mine where I am, which we're going to look at, by the way, everybody. But
yes, 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 yes,
I'll
yes.
just remember those degrees all the time now and notice
You
when
will,
things
and it will
pass over.
set things off, and
Yeah.
you'll get to know, oh, Japan is Leo MC or
Hmm.
something, or I don't know, Leo rising or
Yeah.
descending. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Now, if we look at someone like Epstein, who's so, significantly ill all over the place, alive or dead or
Mm.
whatever, but
Mm.
exploded so much, deceit and
Yes.
depravity, let's say, all kinds of,
Mm.
stuff onto the Americans and the world, is that 23 Libra. What do we know about the Washington ascendant? It's 23 Aries, so it's squares. It
Yeah.
squares his Neptune in Libra squares the American ascendant.
Hmm.
His ascendant at 12 degrees of Capricorn is what?
Is
The
opposing the
MCIC.
yeah, it's on it. Yes, exactly.
Yes, so
Yeah.
1, 2 degrees off. It's very, again, I work with 1 or 2 degree orbs, even
Mm.
three, really. Three
Well,
because again on the
his time
maps,
could be a couple of minutes off as well. So, yeah,
true, and but
yeah.
I mean, when you look at something like this, and then you go, well,
Mm.
we know that Neptune's there, and the ascendant could be off, but look at where his Chiron is.
Yeah,
15, right?
yeah.
So we also
Mhm.
know that, his Chiron is very much set into that landscape. And, again, it's the biggest thing being talked about,
Yeah,
in, well, one of them, let's say at
yeah,
this
one of
time.
them. Yeah,
And also his Uranus, right?
yeah,
The Chiron
yeah.
Uranus very much on the ascendant MCIC of the USA chart
Mm.
and geodetic map. And then look, the other thing, okay, so I've just said all of that.
Yeah.
And Saturn is 27 Libra, which is the ascendant of New York is
Mhm.
27 Aries. Okay, so that's the
Wow.
opposite there. Um, but I did a bit more discovery, and we know that Little St. James Island, that's called the Epstein Island, where all the awful things happened, the girls were taken to, and so on, and all the people we've heard about. We can see that Taurus rises just before that. Okay, now Taurus is always going to rise in that particular spot or be the ascendant on a fixed map here.
Mm,
And there's nothing going through there, and I could zoom up closer, but Little St. James is kind of right near that spot.
mm. But
Uh,
there's the
what's
ascendant.
around? Yeah, so what's around 2 degrees Taurus ascendant now? It's squared by Pluto. So
It
that
is.
little island is being Plutoed at the moment.
Mm,
I mean, that's incredible as well as the
mm.
Epstein files come out. And look, I really think there's a lot more to come there because
Oh,
Pluto's hovering there for a lot
can I
longer.
can I just tell you, Ceres will be at 2 Taurus
Oh,
on
there you
March
go. Wow, wow,
21st.
wow.
March
All right.
21st. Because I'm doing a
Okay.
series workshop that weekend, and that's going to,
Okay.
and series is the grief and also about nurture and needs and caring and oh, what's going to come out
Yes.
then? Oh my goodness.
Yes. So this is how, places in the world can, really be sort of
Mm,
activated, even though there's not a line going through there.
mm,
Um, and this is his birth chart, of course. And
mm,
so, yeah, here we can see Neptune close to Washington. It's very close, and so on.
mm,
So these are the things that we look at.
mm,
Now, what have I done here? What have I? Oh, so now the eclipse is coming up. If you look at the plain sort of map, you would, just like again by eye or
mhm,
exercise, where is 28 Aquarius on this map, right?
mhm,
So we know it's ascending through this area. We know it's on the MC through this area. We know
mm,
it's descending through this area, which is again Tehran, right?
mm,
And we know that it is, as I was saying before, this should be over to the right. It's going to be very close to Sydney and through this area down here, and also off
mm,
the coast of Japan. Now, we also know that this, so yeah, look for the squares and the fixed and the mutable.
mhm.
For the, sorry, mutable for the lunar eclipse coming. I won't get into
Yeah,
that, and we know
yes.
that the solar eclipse is square Uranus as well, don't we? So,
Oh yeah.
right. So again, where is 28 fixed overall? Okay,
Mhm,
in the whole map. Um, the eclipse is a midpoint of Mars and Venus, so we can also think about Mars and Venus and where they are at this time.
mm,
Um, it depends how far you want to go. Just start simple, but again, I've gotten used to doing a lot of things.
yeah.
Of course, Saturn
I
and
hadn't
Neptune.
hadn't actually caught the midpoint of Mars and Venus. I do know that that very day, Venus moves just 10 degrees past the sun, so is back online and emerges from her underworld on
Well,
conjunct
she
the
could be
North
very
Node.
much already out of the
Well,
underworld because
depending
she's
where
already
you
10
are, yeah,
degrees. Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes,
yeah.
yes. So,
But officially, she's 10 degrees apart that day. So 10
yes, yes,
degrees
there
and
you
2 minutes.
go.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Mhm,
yeah, she could be
mhm,
already out, but whatever, because she's
mhm.
moving very close to the tempo of the sun still. So
Yeah,
they're both moving at 10 degrees for, like
yeah.
apart for a bit. But so the
Mm,
midpoint, yeah, there's a midpoint between of the eclipse to Mars and Venus. So again, drawing in more from wherever Mars and Venus are. And Jupiter's stationing, although, it's a few weeks away, it's hardly moving at all in the next few weeks, right? So I call it stationing
I do
already.
too. It's at its degree that it's going to station
Yeah,
directly.
yeah, yeah. And not
Yeah,
even that, it's only a few minutes or,
yeah.
20 minutes of arc. So that's really
Mhm,
nothing in the sky. And so
mm,
now that's stationing. Now, what
mm,
we can see here, now this is what we call a midpoint or eighth harmonic. It's 135 degrees. So it's not 90, it's 90 plus 45. Again, an eighth harmonic. So very significant to this eclipse is Uranus and Jupiter and Venus and Mars.
mm.
All right. So I wouldn't be
Wow.
delineating the meaning of the eclipse without all of those also
Mm,
involved, right? So
And
again,
the eclipse, I think the eclipse could be amazing for some people, but it's a
it's on
whopper.
my Saturn.
It's
It's-
well, it's sextile my ascendant, and it's on my progressed sun. Exactly.
Right, right, right.
Hmm.
Well, on my
Hmm.
Saturn, I mean, in the past few weeks, and Saturn moving off the
Mm,
end of Pisces and all that, it's been a very reflective time and a
mm,
very of kind of purging time. So
mm,
I haven't felt very sociable.
mm,
Yeah, there's a few other personal things going on with family and stuff, but it's also very much about work for me and where I
mhm,
want to go from here now. Anyway,
mhm.
that kind of
Yeah,
thing. I've spelled
yeah.
eclipse wrong there, but don't
Uh,
forgive me. So then again, where are we focusing? So the red parts are where we see the eclipse lines. Again, this
mm.
is geodetic, it's symbolic. The eclipse is actually happening down here somewhere, isn't it? Or yeah, down here
It's
somewhere
only
over
really
Antarctica.
visible over the Antarctica in the very
Yeah, yeah,
tip
it's
of
very
South
so
America, right? So,
yeah, so but by degrees, again,
mm,
28 degrees of, let's say,
mm,
just fixed overall. This is where it's on the IC, this is where it's on
mm,
the MC, this is where it's rising through. So again, through,
mm.
well, through your area in a way, isn't it?
Oh,
Um, and rising through Tehran, right through the middle there. And then the blue markers I've marked is where on the geodetic map it crosses Uranus. Okay. So
mm,
again, this is what you'd call parans or angles in ACG maps. This is again very symbolic. But
mm,
crossing over on the coast here, it's all out in the
mm,
water, really. So you kind of think, okay,
mm.
oh, earthquakes, underwater earthquakes, something
I
like
was
that could
going
happen.
there as well. You
Hey?
know, I was going there in my head too. Yes.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You can't
Yeah.
help thinking
Mhm,
about that.
mhm.
And again, not exactly on the day, but around that time.
Yeah.
I mean, Jupiter's like all the way through New York, stationing here and off to the MC of
Mm,
USA. And as you said, the eclipse degree is on the ACG map is rising over the
mhm.
USA. So again, a
Yeah.
lot of combinations going on.
In
And
Washington as well. Ooh.
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
know.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
And
I've
what's
just added
and
where
you've got
Jupiter
one
is.
you've got one hot spot at the bottom, right in Antarctica. What's crossing there? Oh, there we go. That's Jupiter. So couldn't see it. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I've just added Jupiter because
Yeah.
again, I think
Mm,
it's very significant to
mm,
what's also happening at this time,
mm.
being, in the eighth harmonic from this
I
time.
think so. Yeah. I'm a
Yeah,
bit
so
worried.
this
I'm a
is
bit worried about the Antarctic ice shelf with.
I remember watching, I remember hearing
Mm.
about an ice shelf, a big piece breaking
Yes.
off a few years ago.
Yeah.
And Saturn, I think must have been over here, and Saturn had just crossed over it
Mhm. Yeah.
on the geodetic map. And I
Yeah.
went, oh goodness,
Mm,
like the divers that went missing. I can't remember what was happening here, but again, geodetically, there was something
mm.
big happening, that was many years ago.
Yeah, I
So
remember.
it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
so it's amazing what you'll find. But let's go to
Mm,
Tehran again, 26 Leo ascendant,
mm,
21 Taurus MC. So this is their geodetic chart.
mhm,
Okay, let's say with the coordinates right there,
mhm,
GE Leo. Yeah, there you go, 26, 21 Taurus.
mhm.
And then we put the solar eclipse on to that chart, and it's because I kind of want to keep the ascendant descent. The eclipse is a little bit, afterwards, but it's
Yeah.
in that spot. It's
Yeah.
right on the descendant.
Yeah.
So that's how you slot in a chart, let's say. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I've asked AstroGold to actually be able to fix coordinates in a chart, but they haven't done it yet. They said, "We'll look into it, Julia. No one's asked for these things before."
I'll ask them
I,
as well then. Maybe if more people ask, they'll do
yeah, right.
it.
I'm not sure how easy it is. It should be. I
Mm.
think SolarFire can do it, but I don't use SolarFire anymore because I'm on a
Yeah.
Mac. But anyway, let me know if you're on SolarFire. You can do that sort of.
Mhm.
There'd be a setting saying geodetic equivalent chart.
Mm.
let's say, for a particular spot. And then this is where you are, Louise. Okay, so Salt
Yes.
Lake City, Utah. So if we want to know 111 degrees west is you're taking 111 degrees off 360 because you're going west,
Yeah.
right? Which makes it 9 degrees Sagittarius, on our
Right.
map.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So you
Hmm.
can do that, if you want to
In
do
your
your
head.
calculations
Yeah.
yourself. Um, and so what we know is that the GE is 9 degrees Sag MC. So we can kind of look at it by eye and go, yeah, okay, that's about 9 degrees
Mm.
Sag and 23 Aquarius
Mm.
ascendant. All
And I
right.
told Julia I was going to tell everybody a very quick story that after I moved here and decided to become a professional astrologer after hobbying for so long, I found a pile of books at a yard sale and I bought them all. And this one book, Mysteries of Venus by Mark Lerner, was in that box. And it's a brilliant little book, but of course it was not very well known. And
Yeah.
he had dedicated each copy of his book to a degree of the zodiac, and this one is 23 Aquarius.
Oh my
And
God, I want to see it.
I'll bring it to
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Wow. And probably not
Mhm.
available anywhere anymore. Oh my gosh.
Mm,
So Louise, yeah, so these are your coordinates. Let me just, yeah,
mm,
so again, we're crossing it from the Aquarius, the
mm.
line that comes before, and then what's on top, of course.
Well, by the
Yeah.
way, that's the degree of my Chiron, if anybody wants to know as well. So
Yeah, right. And you said, so your
Mhm.
Chiron, have you felt, oh, hang on, what's going on? Has your Chiron been significant in this area? Has it been a
Mm,
healing place for you? Oh, I mean,
very,
you've become the bold astrologer, let's say. That's
yeah.
chironic. Like I don't care what anyone thinks about me. This is me.
Exactly. And
This
it's in
is
my
what I
in my
do.
second house, so that's my self-worth and how I earn you my money. And
Yeah, yeah,
my
yeah, right.
midheaven, my Mars
Yeah.
is on my
By
midheaven on the
helping
MC.
people, by healing people, by
Hmm.
guiding people with the wisdom of the stars. So
Hmm.
that suits. So it's incredible how it does very much,
Mm.
in this purely symbolic way as
Mm.
well, and also so magically relate to our story,
Mm.
right? And our
Yeah.
lives. So yeah,
Mm.
that's really cool. And then the eclipse at 28
Mm.
Aquarius is, it's near, like if you were slotting
Mm.
that in, it's very much near. So, let's see, maybe something happens through Phoenix, this area,
Yeah.
again,
Well, we've
who knows?
actually had a few rumblings of earthquakes and things.
Okay. Right, right, right.
We are
Um,
on a fault line, so it could.
oh, you are on the fault line out there as well. Yeah.
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm,
Yeah, wow.
mhm.
Well, be safe, everyone, because this is quite a bit of a doozy eclipse.
It is. Mhm,
Um, so yeah, so again, this is your kind of chart, let's say,
mm.
for now you have to use in order to get these geodetic coordinates for your place on a chart. You need to use quadrant house. Okay?
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to do it with because and this is such an indicator of, in my perspective, why whole sign houses are just not a thing. They seem very outdated, and because this is very much relating to exactly what is rising, what is on the
Yeah.
midheaven at a particular time. So I know that they use the ascendant and descendant. Anyway,
Yeah.
just my two bobs there
Well,
because this is
I'm in
this is the
agreement,
living
Julia.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very much about the living astrology, the thing that's
Mhm,
real. I mean, geodetic charts is funny. It's not the real thing. It's so symbolic, but
mm.
again, it's also patterned into this everyday turning
Yeah, it
in
is.
a place. I find that amazing. I just
Yeah, I know.
Here it is.
I'm gonna go and I will look exactly where 28 Aquarius goes kind of through near here.
Yeah. Yeah,
Myself.
yeah,
I will
yeah.
look at that.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm,
yeah. You can
mhm.
zoom up very close and all that
Yeah,
kind of stuff, of course.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Mm,
yeah, so there you go. So find that
mm.
for your own place. I mean, the other thing, again, learn how to fold by mind's eye, even,
Mhm.
Many unseen aspects are the midpoints. Again, I don't
Mm.
know many. I've introduced, let's say, midpoints into geodetic maps a bit more. I know a few people that may be using them, but again, you're missing a lot of the story if you're not doing it. And
Yeah.
again, getting to know the cosmodial. But that's something for another time, Louise.
Yes. Oh yeah. Well,
All
yeah, that
right.
I'm sure people's brains are enough fried as it is, but
Yeah, right.
I think it'll pique people's interests. And on Facebook,
Yeah.
can people just follow you on Facebook for your
Sure. Yeah,
posts?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 We can put me
Yeah.
down there. Oh, sorry, I've
Because
just got one more thing. See, this is
yeah.
the eclipse, right?
Mm.
And 28, what am I saying?
Oh,
So
that's on the
Uranus is
dial.
in the same area, showing the midpoint, right? So this is how, yeah, you use the dial.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also a midpoint for Mars and the nodes. So again,
Mm.
and there's Jupiter pretty close to being, in aspect. You use about 1 degree, that's like 1.5, so close
Mm.
enough.
That's making
Um,
my eyes pop a little bit too.
so anyway, I hope you don't mind before I stop the
Oh
share.
no, no,
Want to know
go
more
for it.
about CIA? We've got an amazing retreat coming up in Mexico. It's something we planned in 2020, Louise, and
Mm.
it had to be cancelled. So I'm really
Oh,
rapt that Ariel will be coming and
oh,
Uriria, who's a scholar in Mayan cultural Venus. So wow.
oh, wow. I would so love
Ursula,
to go, but I'm doing a peer
I know
group before
UAC and everything.
UAC and
See how you
yeah,
go. I know,
yeah.
well, timing wise for me, it was like better to do it as I'm doing that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Ursula, who's the Mexican agent, who it all started around because she's an artist and an amazing astrologer, and her wonderful daughter, who is kind of
Oh,
doing all
okay.
the on ground organizing. So, very excited. If you're interested in that, come and have a look.
Well,
It's all
send me the
website.
link for it. I'll put it in the description.
Okay, fantastic, Louise.
Oh,
And then Time Lords Magazine, I think
mm.
we're going to have an excerpt of your book in then at the next issue.
I
So
have to
have a look
send
at,
that yet, but yes.
yeah, that's all right. There's still some time, but great articles about many great writers, Eileen Nauman, Gary Caton, Maurice Fernandez, Andrew Smith. Anyway, have a look at that. There's some really great material there.
I love Andrew Smith, by
Um,
the way.
Yes, yes, he's a very special one.
He is. He is.
Join, follow, like Cosmic Intelligence Agency, or contact me
Mm.
for whatever.
And I'll put the links in the description too. And it's Julia Simas on well, you can see how it's spelled on Facebook. She posts a lot of these maps and some analysis with them if you kind of want to keep tuning in. I think that's a good way
Yeah,
to do it instead of trying to take it all in at once. So, but and
I
then
think I
she'll
might have
write
to
a book,
start a bit of a
hopefully.
YouTube update with these things
I
because
think so.
so
Yeah.
more people will see it. Yeah,
Mm,
anyway, stay tuned.
yeah.
Neptune, Saturn in Aries, new things on the way.
Well, thank you for coming on, Julia. And yes, we tried this 24 hours ago. We couldn't, it was
Something
so
weird
weird.
happened.
Oh, so we had to reschedule till today. But I love what Julia's doing with this. And, I just for my own stuff, I'm not
Right.
planning on writing another book or going down another research rabbit hole. I'm still on Venus star point and planetary nodes working together. That's my thing.
Ah, fantastic. Yeah, interesting. Wow, wow, wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
look, there's so many. Yeah, I
Oh,
don't know. As a Pisces, I have too many things.
yes. Well, Sagittarius, yeah, and Gemini moon.
Hopefully that Saturn will help me kind of cut
Oh,
off a few things.
oh,
But
let's hope. Yeah.
thanks for having me, Louise, and thanks for
Oh,
your interest. It's
thank
always a
you.
great pleasure to
And
pass on some stuff.
I'm going to look at your retreat. I doubt I'll be able to, but I wish I could. But we'll see.
Let us
You never
know.
know.
Let us know.
Still
Still
Julie.
places left.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, good interest. So yeah, which
Yeah.
is great. So anyway, we'll keep in touch, Louise. Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye bye.